So we've put out a few showcases of a lot of stuff in Modern Warfare as of now, but today I wanted to give my honest opinions on the game as I'm finally traveling back home today to get the setup back to normal and grind out some content further. And I've admittedly been a little bit behind schedule from where I wanted to be due to laptop errors, so I do apologize if some of the content was a little later than I had planned, but alas, it is what it is, and wanted to talk to you guys about Modern Warfare in general today as I travel home. And before we jump back into it and commit to bringing even more and more content on Modern Warfare to you as the days roll on closer to when the game launches. But anyways, while we put out the raw information, I wanted to give my own input on the game, and having done a ton of question and answering on Twitter, I figured it'd probably be easier to articulate my thoughts on everything all in one singular location. So here it is in this video. Full disclosure, yes, myself and the many other YouTubers and press that went to this event were brought out by Activision, but I do not let that aspect cloud my perception of the game or the thoughts that I have, and hope that my heavy criticisms of Black Ops 4's business practices can kind of serve to back that up. And what I'm reviewing today is the pure artistic vision of the Infinity Ward team, untouched, untainted, unbothered, however you want to put it, by the business practices that probably will inevitably come and be introduced into the game later on in the year post-launch. But for now, the core game, that's what we're focused on, and that has more positive than negative in my opinion. But with all the good, there of course is bad somewhere. It's not perfect, and we'll be breaking down all of that in today's video. First things first though, I also do want to encourage you guys to start a conversation in the comments below. Let's talk about this in a communal fashion. What do you like, dislike, love, or hate about what you've seen so far from the reveal and everything we've discussed on the channel so far? Your view is just as valid and fine as mine, simply because it's an opinion. Normally, just like the concept of pre-ordering, I think that having hands-on experience with a game is the best way to accurately gauge and articulate your thoughts on everything. So same thing goes for pre-ordering. Of course, I would hold off until at least the beta for that. Hopefully with the beta, you'll be able to shape your own perspectives here a little bit further with this, and maybe it will sway your own opinion having some gameplay feel under your belt come that open beta. But for now, of course, feel free to let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. Now, I'm sure that I'm going to forget something here, some portion of this, but here's the hoping I cover all the bases and don't kick myself in the ass right after this goes live saying, you know what, man, I really wish I would have put my feedback and input on insert whatever is here. But jumping into it, let's start with the pros. Let's start on the good side here at this one. Firstly, one of the things that I absolutely loved, and this is just me geeking out over some of the stuff here at this, is the weapon customization and the absolute insane amount of depth to what we see in terms of weaponry. Now, we had 19 weapons up on deck, which honestly for a reveal build is pretty good. I think that was a little bit more than what we had with Black Ops 4 last year, but more so talking about the just already complete nature of the gunsmith, having 30 to 60 attachments per weapon, with the lower of that simply being for pistols. 30 attachments for pistols is insane. But that said, it's awesome to see that much customization and how it also visibly changes the weapon. That's going to do wonders, I think, here for just uniqueness of weapons and the playstyles that players may carry into each and every single game they choose to play. One other really cool part about that gunsmith is the visible pros and cons feature. Previously, whenever you're selecting an attachment, it just kind of adds or subtracts from that what is ultimately an arbitrary bar graph of the stats based on normally 1 to 10. That stuff doesn't really ever accurately depict everything, but with the pros and cons feature here of this, you get to see exactly what's changing for the good and for the worst. So you end up seeing both ways, that seesaw back and forth, to help you really choose what's the best thing to put on your loadout. Now again, the weapon selection itself is great. I had a lot of fun playing with all the weapons that I got to play around with. So just the customization and depth of what we already see for gunplay, I'm in love with. Next up, I'm a huge fan of all the introductions made into modes and giving so much more for players to mess around with. 2v2, 6v6, realism mode, 10v10, 20v20, it offers just so much to do. And I'm honestly super stoked for 2v2 on a personal side, though maybe it might not be your favorite cup of tea here, and I'm sure many others probably will share that same sentiment, that they might not be as excited for it. But with a bracket system in place, which will happen, it's not something that's kind of like, if it happens. I already played it back in May, and I'm pretty sure they even did a competition on the stream. I was out during that time, but with bracket play system of a 16-team competition built into the game, you best bet I'm streaming some tournaments with viewers and such. That'll be killer. As for everything else, realism is a great way to change up the current dynamic of Call of Duty and what we know, 10v10 and 20v20, and ultimately what I think was debuted to Game Informer, I believe, is they plan on going up to like 50v50. That's actually insane to think about from a Call of Duty perspective. So to offer all these different routes for players to engage with the game, I think that's awesome. Next up, something that I got asked a lot about was weapon balancing, and there's not really much much to articulate here on this because I haven't done a super tremendous amount of testing, haven't gone in depth to look at shots frame by frame or anything like that, but what it felt like was honestly great at this point. And I've said it before and I'll say it again because it still lives up to this same thought as it did in May. At this point, this is still probably the most polished game I've played early in the Call of Duty franchise. I've played the past couple of games now early at some capacity, and truthfully, that's all because of your support, so truly thank you so much for that. But having played a lot of the games beforehand, this is by and far what feels the best. I said it in May that I think that it could go toe-to-toe with Black Ops 4 at that time, a game that's been launched for months and months on end. I think this is the same thing. I think this truly could go toe-to-toe with a full game this far after its launch. So I'm excited to see what happens here with this. Weapons felt absolutely great. And again, coming back to it, another thing I want to talk about is the choices. Not just necessarily about the, maybe say, game mode you want to play or the attachments, even so much to the more finite things like we mentioned on top of that, including how you end up seeing your streaks react with your gameplay, how your health is regened. That's all up to you. For example, Stim Shot is an equipment you can take in place of your tactical grenades, but you're using it as that, a tactical. You don't have to, you can heal regularly, automatically, but you can use that Stim Shot if you like. Additionally, if you want your streaks to act like they did in Modern Warfare 2, chaining together towards your next streak, you can using the perk Kill Chain. You can still get your kills to advance towards new streaks otherwise, but that'll be on your gunplay, not your streaks. But if you take that, you can end up, again, customizing how you play the game even further on such a more finite level and more minute even as such a perk would offer. So that kind of stuff is awesome. And talking kill streaks, while we didn't see the full plethora of kill streaks that we'll end up seeing here within the full build of the game probably, the nuke being withheld, whether that be something that is automatically granted at 25 gun kills, 30 gun kills, or if it's something you actually have to select like you did in Modern Warfare 2, we don't know, but everything else like that, I really enjoyed. Save for what we'll talk about in just a little bit with the minimap, that's something we'll come back to, but things like your Juggernaut, things like your Harrier, or I think it was just named differently, I can't remember off the top of my head what that is, things like your Chopper Gunner, all that kind of stuff returns and they're powerful. They are absolutely insane. One thing that I will say is the Juggernaut, I actually hated playing against it because it was so powerful, but that's something that made Call of Duty great back in the day. You had streaks that were absolutely cutthroat, and that was great. I really enjoyed the kill streaks here. It's gonna be different changing up from score streaks the past almost decade and then going back to kill streaks, but that's something that I look forward to. Outside of that, operators are something that I'm glad they're handled in the way that they are. I'm glad this isn't a hero-based game. Admittedly, the field upgrades can still be kind of considered specialist items, but they're down-to-earth upgrades that I think are almost like a tactical, but without having to include them as a tactical, and that would punish your create a class. I'm all for getting an ammo upgrade like I did with Crash because it didn't act like a dog and ruin a streak or something like that. It's just like popping Bandolier in the beginning, middle, or end of a life whenever you decide to place it. So things like that, I don't really have too much of an issue with. Graphically, I think personally the game is great. I've seen it at 4K, I've seen it run on PS4 Pros, on PCs and all things like that. Personally, I've seen it unfiltered. A lot of the stuff you'll see here and even this video is downscaled ever so slightly by processing on YouTube, processing when rendering the video out, and of course we only captured in 1080p. So that kind of stuff may not necessarily translate entirely 100% to you, but having seen it graphically, I think the game is fantastic, and I know that a lot of people are saying, oh, it looks like Battlefield, but for the longest time, wasn't that something that people kind of held in a higher standard graphically? That's something that I think is just kind of cool to see it come now to the point where it's too much like Battlefield graphically, but I don't know, maybe that's just me again. But anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is cross-frickin' man. I am so excited for this, and of course, being that I think that it was confirmed it's input-based, you're not going to end up playing PC sweats or anything like that, or PC players with scripts and everything like that that actually have hacks. It's going to be something that acts like Fortnite, and that, again, to my knowledge, doesn't have anything that is truly out there or anything that is truly terrifying to play against, but I'm just super stoked to end up playing with my friends on Xbox, playing with my friends on PC if they end up putting in a controller to play with. I'm super stoked for that kind of stuff, and I think that this is honestly a way forward for the gaming industry, and I'm glad that Call of Duty is finally kind of picking up that anchor and going with the times. So I'm all for that. I'm really excited for it. And the final thing I want to talk about here in terms of the pros is no season pass. Free maps to players after launch. That's something that immediately doesn't have anything to do with this gameplay that you're seeing right now. but I'm all for it. Unfortunately, exclusivity still does apply, which is odd given that crossplay is a push to unifying everybody together, but it's only a week rather than a month, so I guess it could be worse. I still personally don't see a need for exclusivity, but good lord, Sony's checks must be nice keeping that whole exclusivity thing going in an industry that is pushing away from that. But admittedly, I am worried about the MTX after Black Ops 4. It's said that Black Ops 4 was a test year, and I really do hope. But with free DLC maps, you have to imagine there's got to be a push elsewhere to generate more revenue. So unless COD Mobile ends up picking up that slack and Activision just like, you know what, let's just do whatever with Modern Warfare, where they're just hauling to the bank with all that money from COD Mobile, because apparently that's going to be a huge moneymaker. But for now, I'm going to again just keep my feedback on the core gameplay, the part that's actually controlled by Infinity Ward and not the suits touching the creative vision that Infinity Ward have. But as for cons, let's get into the things that I really wasn't too fond of, or I understand why people weren't too fond of. The big one probably being the minimap. That's probably what you'll notice the most out of the gameplay itself. Personally, I wasn't too bothered by it, but I understand where players do have an issue with it. I again personally look at my minimap almost as much as I do my actual screen, but from my own experience playing the game both in May and also at the reveal event, I got used to it rather quickly, and when you learn the flow of the maps, it's really not all that terrible. Plus, you also have that teammate tracker coming, which wasn't in the build that we played with, but is confirmed for, I think, the beta and also, of course, the full launch of the game. That was confirmed by multiple Infinity Ward devs and other news outlets alike. Additionally, personal radar isn't that hard to get. It's only 2 kills with hardline and 3 in general, so not terribly hard to get and lasts the same as regular UAV, but I totally get where you wouldn't want that as a crutch streak though, where you have to be required to take that. But I'm sure it'll be interesting to see the changes that may or may not be made come the beta and everybody's full feedback after that. You also do, of course, have that compass on the top of your HUD, but it's just a weird change up that I don't know exactly how I personally feel about it just yet. Again, it didn't bother me, but I totally understand the argument for, honestly, it should be in. So that said, moving along though, realism is the next thing that I want to talk about. Honestly, I love the mode overall. Limited HUD, lethal headshots, and core damage on other locations of the body. That stuff's all great. That's something that I think that I'll find myself playing a lot. But what I didn't like was kind of the lack of hit markers or lethal hit markers. This genuinely made it a little tough to recognize if you got a kill, even with a lack of outline for teammates. Sometimes you may think you're even shooting at an enemy, but it might just be your teammate. To me, there just isn't enough right now to notify you when you've advanced the cause of your team, and I'm hoping that at least we end up getting a kill shot indicator. That I think would be fine just to add in as that minimalist thing here for it. So maybe we end up seeing some feedback in the public beta or upon launch that maybe adds that, but maybe not. But again, sure, you can end up making the argument it's realistic when you see the body drop that they're dead. It's just a personal little gripe of mine that you could disagree with, and I hope that goes without saying that if you disagree with anything else in this, that's totally fine. Again, I want to have a civil discussion here at this and a communal discussion with all you guys in the comments down below. The next thing I want to talk about is the pace of the game. It's definitely slower than recent years, and Black Ops 4 is 1000% a completely different pace than Modern Warfare. It's going to take some different getting used to. It is going to slow down your game, and you will be able to rush once you get used to everything, but especially at the start, it's going to be going from a run to kind of a jog or maybe even a walk. But it's something you get used to, and again, in its own right, when it's the main game and everybody's playing it, I don't think it'll be too much of an issue, but just directly comparing is where you notice those big changeovers. Another thing that I wasn't a fan of was the respawn delays. It seemed like there were respawn delays in almost every mode. I don't want to say that for a fact because I don't recall. Of course, obviously there's no respawn delay in 2v2 because it's just single elimination, but things like respawn delay I think do end up helping to make the game slower, so kind of adding into that last topic of pace. I hope that gets reevaluated and not every mode that we saw with a respawn delay does in fact have a respawn delay come the beta or the launch. That's the hoping. I don't know if that'll change or not. 20v20 is also something that I kind of had personal gripes with just because I think that some of the maps, as crazy as it sounds, might be a little bit too big and might need some reevaluations for power positions and strong points of focus, because my two biggest things here with this, it worked for and against me. So I'm saying this with this having worked in my favor before as well. I feel like you end up running a super long time and then dying and then spawning at the very back of the map. A lot of what we played, I think actually all of it, I lied, 10v10 we played headquarters, but all the 20v20 was 5 flag domination. So you ended up spawning at the very back of the map most of the time, and that was something that just made it feel like you got nowhere in this entire game, because you run, die, spawn back, run, maybe get a kill, die, and so on and so forth. And also coming back to the idea of the strong focal points, there was one place in particular where you could literally look into the spawn if you had all the flags other than this one, and 20 players would be just shooting at people spawning. So it was like hardcore spawn trapping, and yes, I know that goes back to quite some time back in the day, but it was a little too much. Anyways, though, that is kind of where I'm at here with this one. The one other thing that I've seen is the Rainbow Six Siege meets Battlefield. Personally, I don't agree with that. I don't think that that is necessarily the case. I think it's Call of Duty finally progressing throughout its franchise's history, finally going to legitimately a new engine. That's something that can be said for the first time in absolute ages. And I'm excited to see where this goes. I know that not everybody may share that same sentiment, but I'm hoping that, again, with the open beta, players can get their hands-on experiences with it and check it out for themselves. But ultimately, that is my honest feedback here on the game. Again, I loved a lot of stuff, didn't like a lot of stuff, and wasn't a fan of some other things, but that is what it is. It's just something that I want to share my thoughts and everything that I experienced from my playtime at the reveal event. I'm super excited for the beta I'm going to be jumping on. Again, whether or not you want to pre-order for that extra day on PlayStation 4, that's totally up to you, but I'm kind of holding out. I don't really want to do that. But that said, that's where we're going to wrap it up. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you agree, disagree, love, hate, whatever it may be from Modern Warfare's reveal and what we've talked about so far? Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you're already new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare. And of course, continuing on the Black Ops 4 coverage as well. We got the second half of Operation Apocalypse Z coming up. But anyways, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, want to do all that kind of stuff. But that said, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Mine has been Espresso. Take care and peace.